Hey everyone, Navek here, and welcome to another episode of Sequential Summaries. And for this one, we're going to be covering the first 5 issues of Al Ewing and Pascal Ferry's Immortal Thor. And for those of you who don't know, this is technically the second part / a continuation of Al Ewing's Thor saga with the Immortal Thor, or that I actually covered the first issue a while back on my channel. But hey, this is considered a jumping on point. Right, and pretty self-contained, sort of. It's an Al Ewing book. It's kind of weird like that. So, what's the premise of this book? Well, the premise is that after the events of Immortal Thor issue 25, which are very long, very convoluted, and I'm not really going to cover in this comic, Asgard is cut off from the other realms, and no one remembers that the Norse gods aren't just myth and legends, and of course, Thor has been reincarnated to a mortal man called Sigurd Jarlson. And it's not real. And the series kind of plays with what exactly Sigurd is, if he's a reincarnation. I've heard some people theorize that it's kind of similar to what Kid Loki he had going on in his Journey to Mystery run on way back in the 2010s. But we'll see either way. That just because as he's not a god anymore, Sigurd still has that heroic tendency to him. And a lot of other heroic qualities, even though he has amnesia. And one thing I will say about this book, Pascal Ferry's art, huge fan of the guy. I've been a huge fan of his work since Ultimate Fantastic Four back in the 2000s. It's basically with the way he softly draws characters, and he combined with Matt Hollingworth's colors, it gives the book a very dreamlike look, which is kind of fitting since it is a story about stories and mythology and mythical characters. And how they draw on most of the book, except for issue 4, or that book is drawn by Juan Cabal and Matias Iacacano on colors, and it does a good job making issue 4 distinct from the other issues. And if you guys know from my previous coverage on books like Miles Morales' Spider-Man, one of my issues tends to be when art tends to blend together. So yeah, this book has a unique feel depending on who's covering it. So issues 1 and 2 do a good job establishing Thor's supporting cast. A little aside, I have one final thing of the art. Of course, the covers are by Alex Ross, and Alex Ross doesn't miss at all. But yeah. Issue 2, who does a good job establishing who Sigurd Jarlson is, his amnesia, his supporting cast, as of his neighbor Chris, who's who's an artist, and a little kid that got hanging around called Lucky, who, spoiler alert, Lucky is Loki in another form. And it also establishes is how Thor fights. It's fighting with the small hammer on a bungee cord, or which is kind of emblematic. Think of kind of similar to how Mjolnir used to operate when Thor was a god. It also establishes that one of the major players in Sigurd's life, the major antagonist, is of course the evil corporation Roxxon and their various enforcers. The first being the Sons of Thor, or who obviously, since Thor is not remembered as a real character, or they take the iconography of Thor, or use it to kind of as a symbol of their own hatred and bigotry, which unfortunately a lot of people use the symbols of Norse mythology. A lot of shitheads like that. And Thor, however, even though he's a mortal man, Sigurd is still an incredible fighter. With this sequence in issue 2. Issue 3, however, actually expands the conflict a bit. Because as Roxxon calls on a certain familiar character, Blake, aka Donald Blake, although he doesn't call himself Donald anymore. Thor's former alter ego, who has gone through a lot of weird changes, is from the former Dominic Cates stuff. And now he's seemingly reincarnated as a new person and leading a militant cult of people called the Sons of the Serpent. And it's never good when you have supervillain henchmen calling you father. Issue 3 is basically all about the first first encounter between Thor and the sons of, between Sigurd and the Sons of the Serpent, and with a really exciting fight scene in a construction site on scaffolding again, and showing that despite the fact that he's mortal now, Sigurd is still one hell of a fighter. Though, of course, no good deed goes unpunished, and the issue ends with Sigurd getting arrested, and of course revealing that Odin has also been reincarnated on Earth as his more wanderer self. So yeah, that's how issue 3 ended. Issue 4 is kind of the most directly tied into the Immortal Thor, or since it's covering the rest of the 9 realms, and particularly what Asgard is doing. It's a good character study on Maggie, Thor's alternate dark future son, and the kind of man he is continuing in the Enchantress's machinations, and of course a major reference to that time Ulik became named Tannis back during one of the times that Thor was seemingly gone. Back in the whole Fear Itself thing, which, man, that is pretty nostalgic for me since I started reading comics around that era. So yeah, issue 4 was just a nice little showcase of what's going on in the other realms. While issue 5 kind of serves as the conclusion to this first arc, and I'm going mostly by what the aids are going by, how the trade paperbacks are going to collect this. So yeah, a lot of this issue is a conversation between Odin and Loki. Okay, which I'm not going to spoil the entire thing. Again, I do these videos just to give you guys like a brief glimpses, and my overall and my general thoughts about the comics and manga I'm reading. Although this conversation he does feel, again, like Al Ewing commenting on the nature of the status quo being God, with Loki commenting that Odin shouldn't want to go back to being stunted and caged with how he was before, or interspliced with Sigurd being interrogated by some cops because he is using deadly force to fight back. Again, New York is not a stand your ground state. However, he's managed to get pulled out of the interrogation by a mysterious lawyer. A lawyer who we will later learn is working for Blake. And while Sigurd might not exactly remember Blake definitely remembers Sigurd. And issue 5 and our first story arc ends with Donald Blake poisoning Sigurd. And he clearly has some dastardly deeds in mind for our amnesiac hero. So yeah, that's Mortal Thor, or issue 1 through 5. This series is kind of a no-sell for me. It's Al Ewing doing a very radical take on Thor, similar to his take on the Hulk for Immortal Hulk. I'm definitely excited to see where this series goes from here, because apparently in the next arc, Sigurd is going to be fighting some of Thor's super-powered villains, which, goddamn, that's going to be an uphill battle. So yeah, I'll see you guys in a few months when I cover the next story arc. And until next time, I'll thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later. Have a great day.